Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Police Academy 2, Their First Assignment. Now this was in 1985 and it's directed by Jerry Paris, so it's a different director from the first Police Academy. And I just watched this today, and if you've seen my first Police Academy review, you will know that I adored that film, and it's on my favourite films list, 500 favourite films, and it's among my favourite comedies, certainly. Excluding classic cinema, because of course Chaplin and Laurel and Hardy and stuff. But yes, no, it was an absolutely great comedy for me, and surprisingly, such a smart writing in that film, and characters that you could care for and get invested in, and the arcs and everything that went on, and as well just how quite genius that the parody elements were, in the way it kind of parodied the cop kind of thing and stuff, and different stereotypes, but as I say, used in a really great way. I know this is the second one, and the first Police Academy is not acclaimed at all, and this is a different director, and from Hugh Wilson it was in the first one, and yes, all the sequels really are not acclaimed either. And you could say that they get worse rated each time, apart from this and Free. Free's got better ratings than this in places. But yes, I watched this film, and once again I was quite surprised. I was really liking it for the first half of the film for sure, and there are a lot of cracks though. It's not anywhere near as good as the first. Let's just get that out of the way. For me anyway. I don't feel that, and a lot of the subtlety I would say, and control that the first one had kind of disappears in places with this one, and a lot of the comedy does go, as I say with the first one, the line was very fine, and at times it almost stepped over that line, but it didn't. In this film it does on quite a few occasions, and it's the basic, kind of plot with this is this gang that are introduced early on, and the leader is called Zed, I believe, and that character was in a couple of the other ones, I believe, and yeah, in this one he's the leader of the gang, and yes, it kind of parodies gang lifestyle and stuff as well as the cops in this film, the cop drama and stuff, and most of the cast return. Excluding, Sergeant Callahan, a couple of others as well. Captain Harris isn't in this film. He's kind of replaced with this guy called Mauser, who I thought was a really, really good character, actually. He was one of my favourite newcomers. But yes, it has most of the remaining cast, and the characters of Tackleberry, Michael Winslow's character, of course. All these guys, Mahoney as well, they're all in the film, but there's quite a few, people that didn't return for this one. Leslie Barbara, who I forgot to mention in my last one, really, he was a really good character. I really got behind his arc as well in the first one. But yeah, most of the main cast, you could say, returned for this one, excluding the ones I mentioned. And this basically, there's this gang that is going around kind of terrorising people, and raiding shops and everything, and it kind of parodies that in a pretty ineffective way, I would say, to be honest, though. That was the thing for me that didn't work too much in this film, because I was really enjoying most of the stuff at the station, and as well Mahoney, his partner that he meets, although kind of one-sided, that character, the one that just eats, it's kind of parodying hygiene and stuff, making fun of that. He is a bit one-sided, but it was a good character, and I did enjoy him. The comedy it worked there, and what I'm saying is basically all the cop stuff, and stuff at the station, with Mauser and everything, all the dynamics that play off, once again with Mahoney, it all works so well. It's entertaining, but it doesn't go too far, the comedy. On the other hand, though, as I say, the gang stuff does not work for me, really. It's just a lot of gross out humour, unfortunately. And the leader, Zed, I found him quite funny as a kid. Not so much now at all, really. Maybe he's better in the third because I remember what happens there, which I won't ruin if you've not seen it. But yes, he just kind of he's got this gimmick is that he doesn't really talk like a normal person. He kind of just screams everything, and at times he just screams in people's faces, literally. And I think it just goes a bit really too far. No, it does go really over the top, and it's fine if you like that, but I think that kind of taints the film when you've got a lot of the kind of smartly written stuff with the the regular characters, the cops and stuff. But even then, in the final act, things go over a little bit too much there as well. With Mahoney and stuff, because he goes undercover eventually. But yes, you've got a couple of new characters. Lassard's brother in this film, who kind of takes over as well. I really liked his character. It was a really good character. He kept things at bay for most of the film. There was one or two places where it went a bit too far. This film for me as well. It's clearly not quite as controlled. The comedy, it kind of overtakes at times. But these characters I mentioned. Mauser, Proctor as well. He's kind of the guy that's with him. And of course Lassard's brother. They keep the film at bay at times. But there is other times where, especially the gang members, it really it goes way too far, way too over the top, and unfortunately they're kind of involved with the main plot. Basically the cops, in this film, they're meant to go and clean this district up, and stuff, and bring justice to the streets. I never really got behind this too much, and I did get behind a lot of the stuff, pretty much all the stuff in the first one, just because it was a comedy, it was a lot of stuff that was quite wacky and stuff. I still got behind. I got invested, and even though it wasn't meant to be taken seriously, the gang stuff, the riots at the end. I think in comparison, the final act of this, involving the gang members, is a real letdown. It takes place in this kind of quite uninspired base that they have, and it's just a bit bland. The ending act, a bit over the top of what happens with Mahoney. But yes, there's a lot of stuff to love in this film, and most of it I really liked for the first half. They kind of, in this film, they introduced a new female cop, and she's really good at first. I thought she, this tough woman cop, and in the second half of the film, at first they basically build up this romance with Tackleberry, and in the second half, it kind of goes astray, and it kind of gets ruined. She basically takes him back to her house to meet her parents and brother, and there's a lot of gross out humour there, just cheap humour for the most part, with the punching and everything, and then you just can't take that seriously. And then the woman, the woman cop, she just kind of acts out of character because she just laughs hysterically, and she wasn't like that in the first half, and I thought that wasn't character development really, that was just cheap cop out. It completely changed her character there, and just really what was quite well built up actually for the first half was kind of thrown out the window and in return you got this kind of cheap humour with her character, and just some of the stuff was really out of place there, but I did like that, overall I did like that kind of thing with Tackleberry, but really if you compare it to the first, I don't think any of the characters are as good as they were in the first. The writing is just not as strong at all, and things just go a bit too far in the second half, and particularly the final act. But there is some stuff to like in the final act. Some of the action is quite good, and some of the comedy does work, but not really with the whole thing with the gang. There is some funny bits at the end when they all come in to kind of infiltrate the base. Mauser, and of course Hightower. But generally, yes, this is it's nowhere near as good as the first for me personally. I know some people do prefer it, but I just think it really lacks the actually really smart writing that the first one had. Of course, there were stereotypes in the first one, based on stereotypes, but they were their own characters, and a lot of the things that were built up, the relationships between even Hightower and Mahoney, it just felt like that never really happened, and the first never really happened. In this film, you couldn't really feel as much, the actual friendships and stuff. And yes, the comedy did take over it quite a lot. It was well shot though, well edited again. And the film moves quite. It moves from act to act with quite ease. It's well directed in places, but I just think that the tone of the film, it just doesn't. A lot of it is lazy writing, and the tone just doesn't quite. The gang members. Does not quite mesh the stuff with them with the cops. As I say, especially that final act. And Zed is a really, really, I think, a cheap character in this film in particular. And just a bit disappointing. But again, based on the acclaim, it's quite underrated. I do think it's a solid sequel, but just and of course it's better than 4, 5, 6, 7 for sure. I'll say that now. But yes, compared with the first, it's not much to talk of for me anyway. But yes, I did really enjoy this film again, and it had a lot of flaws. It was a very flawed film, and that balance between seriousness and comedy that the first one had, and had it so well. Worked throughout the film really. This one didn't really. It didn't have the control. You couldn't quite take a lot of it seriously when you needed to, really. It was a lot more focused on the comedy, and that's great sometimes, but some of the comedy in this film, really particularly with that gang member stuff, the gangs, was quite cheap, lazy, very one note, and just for the characters to go around just chucking things about, and just screaming at people and that, it didn't quite tick the boxes for me. That's not really what I want from a comedy. If I wanted that, I'd watch an Adam Sandler film. His comedies anyway, not Punch Drunk Love. But yes, it is a good film. It's an average film, I think, actually. It was let down by that final act. I was going to say it's good. I still did enjoy it. I'll give it a like for sure. And it's not for what it is. It's still decent, and if you've seen some of the later ones, this is nowhere near on the level of that. It's still quite worthy of being called Police Academy. A lot of the things, as well, Michael Winslow's character, who almost worked every time in the first one, didn't quite work all the time in this. Again, it went a bit too far, especially the bit where he was barking in the changing rooms. But the banter in them stuff, worked really, really well. It's just some things in there went over the top, and certainly a lot of elements of the film were just they just weren't as earned. The comedy wasn't as earned, and there wasn't anywhere near as compelling arcs that you could get behind. But yes, Police Academy 2, their first assignment, I think I'll give it a 67%. So yes, average, but nearing into that good mark, and nowhere near as bad as people say once again. And what I'm going to do actually is pick up the set, the Blu-ray set, and review all the rest of the Police Academies on this channel. In for some shocks, but although I kind of know what I'm getting in for 6 and 7, but I'm not looking forward to a lot of them. I'm really looking forward to 3 once again, because I really liked that as a kid, and 4, I did like some of that. I remember, not too sure how I feel about it now, but yes, I think this is still a decent film. It has a lot going for it, and at times it's really, really good. Once again. Just let down by mostly the second half, and particularly the final act, and a comedy that places too much emphasis on the comedy in some of the times the wrong places, and it's not great comedy. It's very, very cheap at times, cheap gags. The stereotypes are just stereotypes sometimes in this film, whereas the first, they were more than that, although clearly overt stereotypes on the surface, but as I say, they were more than that. At times in this, there wasn't anywhere near as good as character development and stuff like that. But yes, you can enjoy this film for sure, and it's a solid comedy, definitely. So yes, as I say, I'll be reviewing some of the all the rest of the Police Academies within the next few weeks. And yes, we'll have some more reviews up this week, of course. I plan on doing a Badlands review, because I'm finally getting my TV back tomorrow, my proper one, the one that I use. I'm going to be doing some more Ozu reviews, hopefully, and some more Nicholas Winding Refn films. So, thanks for watching my review of Police Academy 2.